So if you're new here, this is my 2004 Chevy Tahoe Z71, and this is going to be the kickoff video for the build that's to come. We're going to be overhauling the front end on this thing. We're doing an HD bumper, HD grille, HD hood. We're going to do a little something special to the running boards, redo the interior, clean up the outside, lift it up a little bit, add some power, new wheels and tires. It's basically a complete build. And today we're going to start off the video with something sweet, simple, and I think something really, really useful. So if you're new to the channel, I'm going to put a link to Tahiti's playlist right at the top of the screen there. We've done a lot of stuff on her up until this point, and if you want to know what happened and how we got that front end damage, I'm going to put a link to that video right after that one as well. But today, before we get started, I have to extend a huge thanks to Will over at East Coast Gauge Repair. Thanks to him, we have a nice, fresh rebuilt cluster we're going to be installing in the Tahoe. In addition to that, he completely overhauled my factory glitchy AC HVAC controls. And of you guys who own one of these, a Suburban, Tahoe, Escalade, Yukon, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now I'm going to put a link to East Coast Gauge Repair down in the description. I definitely recommend going over to his Instagram page, checking out all the jobs he did. He just has dozens and dozens of different cluster setups for all these GM trucks and SUVs, different bulb colors, needles, gauge faces, you name it, he can do it. Hell, if you just want a factory rebuild, your stepper motors replaced, everything just working stock how it would have been when the truck was new, he can also do that. Oh yeah. All right, so what I have right here is the stock gauge cluster that came out of Tahiti. I pulled this out, sent it over to Will. He's actually located in Maryland. He completely went through this, checked all the stepper motors, replaced any ones that were bad. He put in white LEDs as per my request. And you can see I went with a very, very basic layout here. I went with the 2500 Silverado gauge face. You could tell that's what it is because we now have a transmission temperature gauge. And a very common misconception is that you could go out, grab a stepper motor, solder it onto your board, pop it in the truck, and have it just work immediately. But that is not the case because this does need to be flashed. The whole cluster needs to be flashed after installing that gauge. So if you go out and do that, it's just not gonna work. Now, Will has already taken care of that. He's installed these nice red needles that I think just sets it off and makes it look a little bit more sportier. Not that it really matters in a 5,500 pound soccer mount SUV, but I think this just looks a lot cleaner and even more factory than the factory orange gauges that GM pretty much just parts bin used in all these SUVs, the express vans, the Blazers, pretty much anything that came with this style of gauge face. So we have our nice new gauge cluster we're gonna be installing, but in addition to that, he went and completely overhauled my HVAC controls for me. Any of you guys who own one of these things, Silverado, Tahoe, Suburban, whatever it may be, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you go to adjust your heat, your air conditioning, you turn these stupid things up and the temperature, it just completely flips out. It goes up, down, it doesn't move where you want it to. And essentially you have to go really, really slow or put a little bit of pressure on it to get the temperature to go where you need it. Will took these apart. He cleaned out the potentiometers here, as well as installed some white LEDs to match our cluster. So let's go ahead, get these installed, and then we're gonna jump over to the cluster. And yeah, I think I'm more excited to see how these are gonna work than the actual new cluster itself. So as you can see, my dashboard is already apart. I am gonna go through the processes of putting this stuff back together. But first, we gotta pop our HVAC controls back in. Let's just reconnect the blue and gray connectors. And then it has these kind of little locking tabs on here. Let me just line that up with the holes, just like that. We're installed. Now these do take two 7mm screws that screw right through the sides here. I swapped these out with junkyard controls a few months ago, which also had the same problem. And for some reason I didn't reinstall these screws, so I guess I'm just gonna be riding the clips for now. But now jumping onto the instrument cluster, first thing we need to do is get the shift lever out of the way, and we wanna pull the steering wheel all the way down. Put the parking brake on. Now we have plenty of room to get the cluster in. So what you want to do here is kind of flip it like this. We're gonna grab our connector, clip it in right at the top. And then simply kind of roll them into place. And there are some guide pins in there at the bottom, so they fit in there just like that. And now we have to install the 4 7mm screws that actually hold them in place. All right, those are all in. And that's pretty much it as far as the cluster being secured. We just got those 4 7mm, the connector, and it's basically it. So I'm gonna drop this back down. I'm gonna put the dash trim back on. And this is just held in place with all these clips. So just kind of gently get that back into place. Make sure we don't break any of these. Yeah, and everything's going crazy because I got the passenger door open, I got the rear hatch open, driver door open, but all right, that's basically it. All right, so we got our HVAC controls installed. We got this beautiful, beautiful cluster in. It's just such a subtle change, but man, do those friggin' red needles look good. And I gave these a test on the ride up here. I'm actually in Connecticut for the weekend, and I took the Tahoe. Obviously, I needed some gauges, so I just popped this in, and the transmission temperature gauge works friggin' flawlessly, and it actually runs really, really cool. The whole ride up here, cruise control on, going up random hills and stuff, it didn't get anywhere near the first notch on the gauge here. It actually sat about 1.5 notches above 100, and I think a lot of that has to do with that massive True Cool HD transmission cooler that I installed not too long ago. Let's go ahead and turn the lighting on here, see what the LEDs look like. Super, super bright, nice clean white, looks great with the red needles. And I know a lot of you guys are probably wondering, but Will does use dimmable LEDs, so you can dim these down. It's really hard to see it because it's so bright outside, but they are totally dimmable. Woo, look at that. Just like new. No more jumping around. You could go as slow or as fast as you want. You're a little too cold, go straight up to 90. You want some kind of temperature in between, you could do that as well. Super precise, work just like new. We got our nice, clean, bright white LEDs in there. I think it's time to wrap this one up. So our gauges are installed. They look incredible. Super thrilled to have working HVAC controls for once. Another cool thing that I just might go and do later on in the year once we start tackling the rest of the interior, he can actually change all the bulbs in the rest of the switches. You know, so the regular incandescent bulbs that are in the headlight switch, the 4x4 controls, steering wheel controls, all the window switches, the heated seat controls, all that stuff can be changed to white LED to match. And once again, all it's still going to be dimmable and work pretty much just like the regular OEM stuff. But from here on out, what is next? Well, next video, we're putting a dash cam in this thing because I don't feel like dealing with any of this bullshit anymore. And before I close this out, here are my plans. All right, so I think it's obvious we need to start with the outside repairs. We are going to be installing an HD 2500 hood, a 2500 grille, and a 2500 bumper. The real damage here is with the grille and the hood, but to fit the 2500 grille, we do need to go to that bumper, which has a little bit of a notch, and the grille's a little larger, so it fits just very nicely with the appropriate bumper. That stuff's on the way, and we're going to be tackling it soon. As for the lights, I don't know if I want to keep these style of lights or go back to possibly OEM or a different type of aftermarket. Most likely, I'm going to either stick with these or go to a different aftermarket. And then obviously all this is going to be painted to match the body, just how it is now. I'm not going with chrome bumpers or chrome grille or anything like that. While it's at the body shop, I am going to have the rust repaired down here on the passenger side rocker, and I am going to be reinstalling the factory Nerf bars. I'm actually going to send them out to be powder coated as satin black, so they're going to be more durable than stock, and they're going to look pretty much brand new factory. All the plastics here, those are going to be staying on, but I am going to use more of a permanent restoration technique to try to bring the color back into them. Little fact, these things were always gray. A lot of people tell me to paint them, or they used to be black or whatever. They were gray from the factory. They're just a little faded, and I think I could bring them back around. Wheels and tires, I don't know. I like these wheels. I think I'm gonna stick with an 18 for sure. Any bigger than that, it kind of looks more aftermarket. Obviously, if I go an aftermarket wheel, it's gonna look aftermarket regardless. But I'm trying to go with an aesthetic here that's gonna look like it came that way when it was new, if you know, this stuff was in style back then or available. So I don't want to go too big with it. I do want a more aggressive offset. I want to bring these babies out at least flush with the fender, maybe a tiny bit of stick out, and I think a slightly wider tire. But as for rim choice, that's still up in the air. As for the suspension, we are bringing this thing up. I'm gonna be doing a 2-inch lift. I'm gonna go with a probably a rough country leveling kit. So we're gonna bring the front up, and they have like a little spacer that goes in the back. I think that's gonna be just enough lift to not look super high up in the air and still kind of, you know, give it a bit of a factory aesthetic. Around back here, not much is gonna change. I have a new bumper that we're gonna put on, and that's gonna be sprayed when it goes to the body shop. There's a lot of rust bubbling up coming through by the license plate light over there, and I don't feel like fixing it and having to deal with it. So we're gonna put a fresh bumper on. This stuff is gonna go back on, but once again, I'm gonna restore it to bring the color back in it. The badges, I haven't decided yet. I'm probably gonna leave the Chevrolet on here, just try to buff the shine back into it because it got pretty dull. The Z71 badges, I'm probably gonna get fresh ones of them. And these taillights, they've been working great, and the finish still looks great on them. So I'm probably just gonna leave these alone. A little detail work back here. I'm gonna probably powder coat the wiper arm because the paint's coming off of that. And I'm kind of up in the air if I want to do the Escalade vents back here while I have it at the body shop. Let me know what you guys think. I kind of just want to take these off and just respray them, either maybe a gloss black or a satin black, just to kind of keep with the factory look and have it almost appear like the glass kind of, you know, goes around the edge here. For in here, headliner, it needs to be done. It's long overdue. We're gonna rip that whole thing down, replace it. Seats have been done before. I do need to clean them though. I've been driving this thing to work. I gotta get a seat cover because these beautiful leather seats, courtesy of the seat shop, they're starting to get dirty. So definitely a good detail on the seats. I need to replace the plastic panel for the seat control on the driver's side. And yeah, along with the headliner, we're gonna rip the carpet out. We're gonna put some nice fresh carpet in here, possibly do some kind of sound deadening while we got it out, just to improve the road noise, ride quality a little bit. And then we're eventually gonna be doing something with the radio. I have something pretty cool planned, but that's not gonna be until, you know, a little later on in the build. We're also gonna jump to the back, and I'm gonna recover both of those back seats to match the fronts with nice new leather that I am gonna get from the seat shop. And I don't know, we might do some kind of aftermarket sub or stereo. That's really the least of my worries right now. We got a lot of other stuff we need to address. As for under the hood, I have something really stupid planned, and hell, I still don't know if I'm gonna actually do it, but at the end of the day, 800 horsepower. So I do have a vision for this. I'm not just throwing parts at it. My end goal here is to kind of make something to compete with today's trucks and SUVs. The horsepower wars now are insane. The RAM TRX, I think the new Raptor, the Trackhawk, hell, I even think the new Escalade, they're putting a Z01 motor or a Z01 blower or something in it. Everything now has a shitload of power, and instead of going out and spending thousands of dollars on something nice, new, shiny, and that already comes fast with warranty, and a lot of new features and technology, I'm just gonna put that money into this 240,000 mile Tahoe. But yeah, the aesthetics, you know, the front end, the lift, everything here, it's gonna have a little detail to it. It's gonna have a purpose. I want this thing to look as if it was released back in 2004. If what's going on now with the whole horsepower war thing was happening back then, what it would look like, how it would perform. We want to keep the comfort. We want it to be fast as hell. We want it to look great. We want it to be off-road capable. That's where I'm going with this. And I think at the end of the day, if it comes out how I have it pictured, it's gonna be pretty freaking sweet. But one last time, if you guys wanna go check out East Coast Gauge Repair, I'm gonna put a link to Will's Instagram down in the description. He has a lot of cool stuff that he's done to these gauges on his page. You want different colored bulbs, you want just a factory rebuild, you want a different gauge phase, you want a trans temperature gauge, he can handle it all. And yeah, I am super happy with this, and I am glad I got rid of those orange needles, because it just looks so much better. You don't notice it until you notice it. But yeah, as usual, that's gonna do it for this one, guys. See you in a few days.